Hello everyone, guys. If you're following Russian invasion to Ukraine, you will notice that recently there are so much talks about some kind of referendum in Ukraine and some voting that people vote to join to Russia. So today I want to explain you a bit more this topic, as always a bit history and facts, so you can build your own understanding what's going on in Ukraine. Let's start with the fact that so many people thinking that these regions who is voting to join to Russia, this is some kind of ethnical Russian territories, Russian people, which appear to be somehow under Ukraine, and now they want to come back for their historical motherland. In reality, that's not true, because traditional Ukrainian territories was much bigger than it's nowadays, and these territories which nowadays is kind of voting to join Russia, they always belonged to Ukraine. They was always under Ukraine, and people historically there also was speaking Ukrainian language. So how did it happen that nowadays this area east of Ukraine is very Russian speaking? They are supporting Russia, and Russia is actually invaded Ukraine with the justification that they need to save these people. Well, actually, there is a couple of facts. Everything is not so much straightforward. How happened that these areas become so much Russified? So there are a couple of facts, but before saying these facts, I just want you to understand relationship between Ukrainians and Russians, or between how I would say Russians see Ukraine. So Russians and Ukrainians, it's not nations like, for example, Sweden and Denmark, where they're both Scandinavians, they have similar language, a bit different, they have similar historical things, but a bit different. So those nations, I'm sure they see each other somehow equal. They are just neighbors with common history, similar language, and similar Scandinavian background. But Russia, they see all their neighbors, not just Ukrainians, not in this way at all. They see that they are upper nation, higher nation, greater Russians, and all of nations which is around. This is some kind of low-level nations with down, I don't know, very low development. And this was all territories which was invaded by Russia, and they must be assimilated with Russians, and they must be like Russians. Russians could never be like Ukrainians or any other nation. It's not just about Ukraine, it's about Belarus, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all the areas which is around Russia. They have the same relation to these people. They are higher nation, exactly same like Hitler was doing with Germany, and everybody around is lower nation. If you will understand this historical fact and relation to people, you will understand a lot of other consequences which is coming from such kind of simple thing. For example, Russians who will come to Ukraine, they will never be considering by any means that they can speak Ukrainian language, that they can consider Ukraine as their motherland, and anything else, because this is lower nation. And this idea didn't appear only so this idea actually appeared in the 18th century, but they continue exactly having same ideas till nowadays. And even if you will watch their news right now in 2022, you will find them following exactly the same ideas. They are greater nations, and everybody around is down. So it happened that we have a lot of Russians on eastern Ukraine nowadays, and as you already understand, all these people, they will never consider that they can be part of Ukraine or Ukrainians. And I don't really know which kind of better example I can give to not offend other nations, but I would say it's something like maybe for French person, not nowadays, but in the time when the France was having colonies, and when they had colonies in Africa, go to live in African territory and start assimilating with locals, start adopting their language, their culture, and so on. For sure, that would not be the option for them by logic, and same Russians was thinking exactly about Ukraine. This cannot be for us by any means. We are much higher, much more developed, and we will never go down to be like Ukrainians or to assimilate with them. So from where Russians appeared on east of Ukraine, if I'm saying that those territories was always Ukrainian. First of all, since Russian Empire took over Ukrainian territories in 18th century, Russia started exactly following the policy that they need to kill any kind of Ukrainian things. They was forbidding Ukrainian language, Ukrainian schools, Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian theaters, Ukrainian church services, all these kind of things. Ukrainian language should disappear everywhere from any kind of public spaces. You could hear it only at home between people, but you will never hear it anywhere on public. So all people by force, they start learning Russian only, and they should be feeling that Russian culture is their culture and Ukrainian culture, there is nothing like that. There is nothing called Ukrainian language. It's just Russian language, which was damaged by Polish people who was also ruling Ukraine, some parts of Ukraine. This is how they was presenting all these things. And such policy was for 200 years. So Ukrainians for 200 years, they were not allowed by any means to use their language anywhere except their homes. And for sure it gives some effects, and for sure the level of Ukrainian speaking people and at all this culture awareness became much less, because 200 years is a very big term. Another big thing which happened in Ukrainian history, it was genocide, artificial famine in 1932-33, where during something like 4 months, about 10 million of Ukrainians were killed. You just need to think again about this number, 10 million of people in 4 months. That was a crazy disaster, and so many people died all over Ukraine, and for sure all these people used to have their houses, and as you logically understand, all these houses got occupied by Russians. And Russians who came to those houses, they understood that people was killed by famine, they understood where they came, and for sure they was always hating to be reminded about anything like that, and to remind them where in whose houses they are living. Next thing, which is exactly related to eastern Ukraine, that this territory historically for sure was very agricultural, and there was mostly villages. And while during artificial famine there was a lot of villages totally dead, and also this area is very rich by coal mines, by manganese ore and other raw materials and so on, this area became potentially very industrial. And Soviet Union started building a lot of plants, plants where they was taking raw materials and processing plants around, and all this area became very industrialized. While Soviet Union didn't really have some kind of super advanced machines and advanced equipment even on that time, based on that level of development of industry, they required a lot of very hard work to work on these coal mines and other kind of plants. And for sure such work didn't require a lot of intellectual ability from people, but you just need to be physically strong and go and work on this kind of jobs. And that's why actually people start coming there from all kind of places just to work on these factories, because it was very available, and in Soviet Union they was paying a very big amount of money exactly for workers who was doing some kind of physical job. Another interesting thing, that in Soviet Union, anybody who used to be in prison, he was not allowed to go to work in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, or any kind of big cities. These people mostly had no chances to have any normal work in any normal cities, and their options was exactly to go and work in such kind of industrial places. And one of the example is on the east of Ukraine. There is many others in Russia, some kind of remote areas and so on, but many of them, the big part of them in Ukraine exactly, it was East Ukraine. So all people who used to be in prison and they are not allowed to go to any kind of better place, they all start going to east of Ukraine. And for sure it was people from Russia, from any other republics, and that's why this area became even more populated by Russians and ethnically Russians than Ukrainians, exactly for that reason. So as you see, now we got situation that we have a lot of originally Russian people living in the territory of Ukraine. And it didn't happen that they was born on this land and this land became a part of Ukraine. No, this land was always Ukrainian, but these Russian citizens or Russian origin people, they came to live on these territories for some reason, because of work or because of other things, and they stay there. And now for sure, if they have option to join Russia, and you need to remember that Russians are higher nation and Ukrainians are lower nation in their understanding, for sure they will always vote for Russia. And this voting for Russia is not about this kind of referendum which they are doing right now. It's in general, whatever ideas you will bring for them, whatever things when you can feel more Ukrainian things, when Ukraine want to be more separated from Russia, they will never support it, simply because they consider that they are living with a stupid nation. Their nation is much higher, and there is no other option like just be one part of one big country as it used before. Now, what about this referendum? Do really people support joining Russia? In reality, those areas which is occupied by Russia, it's not normal area where people live normally. Occupied areas by Russia, this is areas under, under, you can say, terrorists, under people who is kidnapping and torturing anybody who is giving any kind of indication that he has any kind of Ukrainian views. First of all, so many people left these areas and they ran away to other territories of Ukraine or outside. People who didn't run away because they didn't have opportunity or something, and if they are still supporting Ukraine, in this kind of situation, if you will tell like that by any means, you are actually getting targeted. You are the next target for kidnapping and for the torturing. And these things, it's not just our imagination. We already see what happened exactly in areas around Kyiv, where Russia occupied these areas, and we see how many people was murdered and how many people was tortured to death, and there is still more things which we didn't discover. Recently, Ukraine liberated some areas in Kharkiv region, and we found that it is exactly the same picture. People was tortured, murdered, and so many other things for any kind of Ukrainian ideas. And same things happening nowadays in these areas where this kind of voting is happening. So actually, there is nobody, I guess, who really have any kind of pro-Ukrainian position, and he still didn't leave. He will never go and participate himself for this kind of circus with this kind of voting, because first, this voting cannot be legal by any means. I mean, from the point of these people, this is not some specific nation or territory or something. This is just some kind of piece of land grabbed by Russia with guns, right, with weapons, and now let us vote that we want to be part of Russia, right? You want to be part of Russia, right? And this is exactly the question which they're asking on this referendum. Second thing, that for sure this referendum doesn't have any, not just supervision, doesn't have anything. So you are just coming, they print you some paper, go vote, and I'm sure whatever you vote, they will not even count these things. They already have another box where they put all these papers with voting whatever they want, and they will just take it and read it in front of themselves, because this process is not supervised by anybody. It's just supervised by people with guns who come and want to join another nation to their nation. So I guess this kind of thing doesn't make any sense for anybody. Anyway, is there, I guess, and everybody understands that this voting doesn't make any legal sense, but let me tell you what people think, and if there is really somebody who want to join to Russia. So as I said, one part of people, this is ethnical Russians who came to this land, and for sure they would always support Russia just because of their historical policies through generations, which they was always providing everywhere. Another group of people, this is people who is very simple people. They are very simple workers, and their job doesn't depend by any means from who is the ruler on top. They just need to go to the coal mines, for example, and they just know that they need to have salary. And the only question, if you will ask him which country you support, Russia or Ukraine, they will tell you where I will have higher salary, in which condition, that one I'm voting. Or who will provide me stable salary, I will vote for that one. I don't care about anything else. I'm not going to theaters. I'm not gonna travel anywhere, not to Europe, not to Russia, not to anywhere else. I will never run my own business. I don't care about taxes. I just need to get my salary in the end of the month. And this is their only problem. Another type of people, it's some kind of, I would say, people who depends from them, who are governmental employees or not governmental, who is financed by budget, governmental budget. So it is governmental employees, plus this is teachers, workers of libraries, workers of museums, workers of some. So they are not actually gaining anything from Ukraine or Russia in general somehow, but they are so much dependent from the job, because these areas usually don't have a lot of work at all, and these people usually have low salary, and they are so much controlled. So whatever you want to organize, you will come to them and you will say, they will give you this voting paper and they will say, you want to vote for sure for joining Russia, right? And these people, they really don't have choice, because they cannot survive if they will go against system. So it's not about they don't support Ukraine and so on. They cannot survive if they will go against system. Now, to say that do really all these people, I don't want to say that all museum workers or library workers also by any means support Russia, or they don't care at all if they are living in Ukraine or Russia. No, of course, this is not the case. There is always people in any profession who care, people in any profession who is very patriotic. But I'm saying, if you are not patriotic type, because about patriotic type, I already said, somebody left and somebody just will not participate because he doesn't, there is no point to participate. You are not the one who is choosing the result. The result's already printed. But for example, if you really don't have, I'm talking about people who really don't have their position, and I'm explaining why. Because they are so much dependent from the system and they would not really care. So that's actually the case, and the answer, if people want to join or not, for sure people, most of the people, they don't want to join. And you know, if in the beginning of this invasion in 2014, when they start creating these republics, maybe some people was really scammed by some ideas, I don't know, whatever, better life, higher pensions, or I don't know, whatever, they was having some kind of hopes. But nowadays, these new areas which they occupied, Kherson and so on, these people, they already know that it is all scam. It will not work. And, you know, and these people in Kherson, especially, they are Ukrainian-speaking people a lot, business there. And for sure, these people is so much against. They're actively protesting. They're actively trying to not participate. But anyway, this is what we have right now. Again, as I said, doesn't important you support or not. Nobody asks your opinion. It's all just for public to show, for Russian TV exactly, to show that there is somebody and somebody is voting. So guys, that was my video. Hope it was interesting and informative for you. Please write me your thoughts. How did you see these things? Did you know about the facts which I told you, or did you discover something new? And thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to watch more videos. Bye bye.